Everyone. So today I want to introduce another thumbnail exercise. As you can see, I'm trying to be consistent. I've got our vocabulary on one side. We're going to go over these terms, and then I'm going to use these 6 thumbnail sketches, which I just freehanded. And I'm going to fill them in as it applies to this lesson that has to do with really using the picture plane again to make compositional choices for landscape, but it really can be applied to anything. All right, so let's start at the very beginning. A picture plane is the rectangle, okay? And this rectangle is a thinking space. You want to think of it as, I like to think of it as a really large canvas. But when you have a really large canvas, you have a lot to lose and a lot to risk. It probably costs a bunch, and then working on it takes time, and the materials you use to fill it in takes time and money and effort. So what these thumbnail sketches are imaginary canvases, and in this case, we're using them horizontally, but by all means, you could draw them vertically and horizontally. You could basically get all your planning out in this place. Okay, so again, this drawing exercise is going to be something that I'm going to ask you to do from observation, sitting outside and actually looking at a landscape. Here I am doing it from my mind, basically, just to help you understand some of these terms. Okay, so the picture plane, that is the space in which we are thinking, okay? And today we're going to talk about figure-ground relationship. I'm going to use my hand as an example. So right now what you see is my hand is the figure, and it is sitting inside the white space, which is the ground, okay? And as I move my hand closer to the canvas, to the viewer, which is the camera in this case, my hand gets bigger and it gets cropped. And when I bring it really, really close, all you see is hand, right? And now as I bring it further away, you see the space between my fingers. That's the negative space. The space of my fingers is the positive space. And as I move it further away from the canvas, the negative space gets larger and the positive space gets smaller. Okay, so let's think of the figure, my hand, as positive, and the negative, which is the space where my hand is not, is the ground. Okay, so we have a figure, and then the space between the figure is the ground. The figure itself is positive, and the ground is a negative. Okay. So that's what figure-ground relationships are. The relationship of the figure to the ground. Okay. The positive space being the space where the figure is, and the negative space being the space where the figure is not. And as my hand got closer to the camera, my hand just didn't fit inside the picture plane anymore, and so it got cropped. In other words, it just went off screen. Okay, so let's start with the first square here, okay? And let's imagine that basically we are seeing a horizon line, which we talked about yesterday. It can go up or down, and that's a separate lesson. There's a tree out here in the distance. Maybe there's also a house. And maybe there's a road. okay? Now in this picture plane, this thumbnail sketch, I'm pretty zoomed out. I see the tree as one of my figures in the ground. The house is another one. There's this diagonal division of the ground. I know that this is ground, and then this is sky, or land and sky. A lot of information. As I decide on my focal point, the focal point will come closer. In other words, I'm going to make a choice to take a section of this, right? And so what if I am to zoom my camera in and make a decision about this space here? Okay, and so now I'm going to take this square, I'm going to draw it again. And the tree now becomes larger, and the house too becomes larger. Okay, now we have two figures, and the ground in between them become a little bit more of a puzzle. This is an interesting composition, but I'm going to keep searching, okay? And so maybe I decide in this one I'm going to take a different puzzle piece. Maybe I'm going to zoom in just on the tree, and I'm going to maybe just let the house be a small section over here, and then the tree comes in, and because the tree is so tall, it goes off screen and will get cropped. Okay, in this case, the tree is dividing the picture in half, and we have space on one side, figure, and space on the other side, and then this portion of the house. Okay, maybe this is a reason that I should think about turning my thumbnail sketch in the other direction, right? So I'm going to turn my piece of paper, and I'm gonna see what happens if I take that tree and give it all the space it needs so that it's not going off camera. And then my house over here. Maybe I'll take just a tiny bit of the road. Okay, this composition is starting to get more interesting to me because of the way the tree is almost coming to the top, the way this angle is dividing it in this direction, the way this angle is dividing it in this direction. These are compositional choices that when you make them and you start getting involved in color and paint application, really in the first few minutes, you're not going to want to change your mind. So it's really important that we start to think a lot about how the figure and the ground relate to each other inside the picture plane. Very much like when we decide to take a photo, and what that photo entails, what you include and what you don't include. Okay, and you don't get to crop it later like you do in a photo. So now I'm going to turn it again this way, and just so that I understand, I'm going to do this again. I'm going to write bottom here, so I don't look at that and think that is strange. Okay, now I'm going to come on over here, and I have two more choices to think about this situation. And again, if this were me really doing this exercise, I'd be sitting outside looking at a landscape and deciding which portion of it I'm going to put inside my thumbnail sketch, one that I haven't tried before. Okay, so I haven't tried moving my tree off to the left. What if I just had a section of the tree coming in? So it's cropped, it's going off camera. And then my house, I got to see a little more of it. Okay. In this case, the focus becomes more on the house as the figure in the ground, and the tree becomes secondary as opposed to the opposite. Okay, and so I've explored 5 out of my 6 choices, and now I'm really going to think, okay, what haven't I done that I'd like to do, and give it a choice. Okay, and so I'm going to just say, how about I include no tree whatsoever, and just take the camera and move it over to the right, and I'm going to pack the composition with the house. No tree. Okay, this is called a central composition, because basically you're taking an object and you're centering it right inside the picture plane, almost like a portrait of a house, as opposed to a house as part of a landscape. Okay, so this is an exercise, and let's just do a little quick review. Our vocabulary is picture plane. That is the space inside your thumbnail sketch. This is an exercise exploring 6 options of the figure-ground relationship. Really thinking about the space that is not the objects as positive. I'm sorry, the space that is the objects as positive, the space that the objects is not as negative, and trying to make this combination of these 2 things dynamic, right? And allowing cropping to take place. Okay, so that's our little demonstration for the day.